Hello, this is Gene Harm. Join me today as I fly a small aircraft out of a general aviation airport. It's my local airport in my hometown. And I wanted to go through with you a simplified departure checklist. I can jump into the cockpit here and take a look around. And I'm going to open up with a plugin called eBag. It allows you to read PDF files, and so I have a number of PDF files. Right now I just have 4 of them in there, 4 or 5, and I'm able to open up the airport diagram. So any charts that you may have, you can open up and view with the plugin eBag. And this is fabulous because I'm able to take a look at the airport. Now, before you get into doing anything on pre-flight, you want to be looking at your charts, your destination charts, any of the maps and charts that you have prior to getting going and contacting the tower. Here we can look at this chart of the Space Coast Regional Airport and all the taxiways and their designated letters. The other thing I have that's viewable is a checklist I put together and made a PDF out of. This is what this video is all about, is running through a very simplified checklist. And we'll go through it together and you'll see what I have. Now, if you don't want to install any plugins or download anything, you have the ability to use the checklist that's built into X-Plane. What you need to do for that is make a text file. So any notepad text file, you can use the same checklist I have now. Just put it into the notepad, type it in there, and then view them in the X-Plane simulator simply by going down to the file and then open checklist, and then you have this little dialog box and you can step through your checklist. But let's go through. The first item on the checklist is to turn on the master switches. Those are the 2 red switches there. So we'll go through that, turn those on. And then on to the next item is to check our surroundings. And we check our surroundings prior to starting up the engine. So make sure that nobody's in the way before we get the prop going.
Startup.
So startup is basically you're pulling out the choke, your fuel mixture there, adjusting that a little bit, and then turning the key. And we're started. And moving on. We'll bring open both checklists.
Mixture 1 inch.
Mixture 1 inch is going back to the choke, the mixture valve, and just adjusting that. We don't want to push it so it's so rich that it chokes up, so, or fouls the plugs or whatever. And then the next thing we do is we look at these 4 little gauges. One of them is our fuel tanks. Definitely want to check fuel, then take a look at the other pressure gauges.
Check flight controls.
In flight controls, I like to do these outside the airplane, and that way obviously if you're in real life you'd be inside and you'd have to be looking over your shoulder, but I go outside the airplane. I'll check all the elevator and rudder and then ailerons. And back inside, next item,
flaps up.
And we'll make sure the flaps are up, ready for departure. And we can look outside, but I like to come in here and actually look at the flap switch and throw the switch. That's the throttle. And go ahead and make sure the flaps are working okay, and then make sure they're back up again. And then once that's done,
Trim.
we're going to check our trim. So this is our pitch trim, and we want to make sure it's set to the gauge there, so it's set for departure. Now, next thing, we're going to flip on all our switches for the lights. The landing lights probably don't need to be flipped on, but if you're flying over trees, some people recommend that you put the landing lights on as a deterrent for birds. So I'm flipping on the beacon, strobe, all the necessary lights. Now for testing brakes, just run up the throttle a little bit. The plane's holding, then release the parking brake, and then check the running brakes. Once everything's good, reset the parking brake. Continue on with our checklist.
Radios on.
So for radios on, looking down at the two gray switches, right of the light switches, flip each of the radios on. Over on the radio stack, top one, and then the second one.
Weather check.
Now to check the weather, we want to bring up the automated information system, the ATIS. Can't remember exactly what the acronym stands for Automated Transportation Information System, something like that. To give you a closer view of the first radio stack, the highlighted frequency is the one you can dial in and change the setting. When you want to activate it, you hit the switch there to rotate it up. If you don't know what the ATS frequency is, you can hit M on your keyboard, bring up the map, click on your particular airport, and then hit the details tab, and it brings up all the different frequencies. Of course, the ATIS frequency is on the PDF chart if you happen to have the charts with you. So that's one of the reasons why I really like the e-bag, because I can actually bring up the chart and find the ATIS frequency right there. So once I have that, I can dial that into the radio and check the weather. So now it's a matter of just flipping the switch and activating that frequency.
Space Coast RGNL information India. 1000 Zulu weather. Wind 050 at 7, visibility more than 10. Sky conditions 4000 scattered, 16,500 scattered, 28,500 scattered, temperature 23, dew point -2. Altimeter 2992. Arriving runway 09, departing runway 09. Advise on initial contact, you have India.
Well, that's good. So now we want to turn off the automated system, otherwise it keeps repeating on us. So we'll flip back to the other
Check
comm.
instruments. Flow.
So next thing is the instrument 6-pack. I call it the flow because I'm going to go through each one of the instruments, those 6 main instruments, starting with the top left one. The top left one is our top left meter is for the airspeed, and it's in the knots. It's not ground speed. It's not like a speedometer. Ground speed is a different thing. We can get that off of GPS, but today we're not going through GPS. We're just taking a look at that. The next item would be the horizon, and then the altimeter. Now each of these have little knobs that if we need to adjust the horizon up and down a little bit, we do that. So that's another airplane that's coming over the radio. We're hearing the tower speak. They're not talking to us.
November 02 X-ray. Papa. Contact ground on 121.85.
Contact Contact ground on 121.85, November, 02, X-ray, Papa.
We can bring out our airport diagram and look at the elevation. Also, when we had the ATIS, it told us what the altimeter reading is, and if we zoom in a little bit on the altimeter and adjust the knob, we can adjust it to the 9992, which is about 32 feet or something like that. I'm adjusting it now. I apologize. When I was doing the recording, I thought I had the mouse indicator on, but it's not visible. I must have had it unchecked in my recording editor. Then going down to the turn indicator on the bottom row, there's no knob or adjustments there. Just make sure the bubble's good. In a real airplane, you would make sure it's not drained out or leaked or anything. We're looking at the magnetic compass. That compass works great on the ground, but it's useless in the air. So we have to adjust our compass while we're in the air. So we're going to calibrate the airplane compass that works good in the air but not on the ground to meet the magnetic compass on the ground. And then we're going to use the orange indicator. It's got the kind of a split indicator, and set it to whatever heading that we're heading off to. We'll get that later. And then we go on to the next step, and that's to get clearance. So we hit the enter key, and when we hit the enter key, it brings up the dialog box for the ACT, and we're going to put in our flight plan. If you don't know the designation, in my case it's KTIX. You can look that up. But if I'm not going anywhere, in the case I'm just going to fly around the area, I put in the same designation as the where I'm coming from, and then type in 2000 or whatever elevation or altitude you want to be at. So we'll just type in 2000, and then we can hit follow the plan. So once again, our departure and our arrival is going to be the same. We follow our plan and go ahead and so we contacted the tower, and they know we're active, and they're going to give us
November 172 Sierra Papa Kilo Tango India X-ray altimeter 2992.
Kilo Tango India X-ray altimeter 2992, November, 172 Sierra Papa.
November 172 Sierra Papa. Cleared IFR to Kilo Tango India X-ray as filed. Maintain 2000. Squawk 4700.
So for the Squawk 4700, that's the bottom item on the stack. It's already set to 4700, but you can click the buttons if you need 4700 and hit the on to turn that on, and then
Cleared IFR to Kilo Tango India X-ray as filed. Maintain 2000. Squawk 4700, November, 172 Sierra Papa.
And remember to repeat every transaction, every communique we need to repeat back. Let's not forget that.
November 172 Sierra Papa. Runway Niner. Taxi via Charlie. 18365 Charlie. Bravo. Niner 273. Hold short of runway Niner.
So there we are. We contacted the tower. They gave us instructions for taxiing.
Runway Niner, taxi via Charlie, 18365 Charlie, Bravo, Niner 273, hold short of Niner, November, 172 Sierra, Papa.
So you have to listen carefully. We're instructed to taxi on Charlie Bravo. In other words, taxi on runway C. I mean, not runway, taxiway C. And if we look at our our chart. We're actually located right to the middle, all the way to the right where it says hangar. That's where our plane is now. Along that hangar, we're going to go straight out and cross over A into C, and then do a diagonal over through C and intersect B, and then end up all the way to the top left where runway 9 is. So one of the things here is I've put it on pause for a minute, and you can go through what I didn't complete my checklist as I should have. Before I requested the taxi, I needed to go through and check a couple more items. There's a toggle switch up there to check your oil pressure and your vacuum pressure. Also check VOR. I'm not doing any VOR today, so there's nothing to do, but those are the dials to the right for instrument navigation. As you can see, you can go through things even while the simulator is on pause. But that's it. We've now checked each and every one of the instruments, adjusted the frequencies on the radios, and everything we need for the air is done. And we're ready to taxi. We're going to do Charlie Bravo on our taxi. And I like to taxi with the external view. And, if you prefer to be inside, fine, but I'm going to do the external view for our taxiing today. Now, a few things I wanted to talk to you about. I'm not a flight instructor. I don't have a pilot's license. I'm strictly doing this video for fun, for reference, for those who are using X-Plane. And the checklist I'm using is just something I put together, a very simplified thing to make sure I check all the items prior to taking off.
02 X-ray Papa. Cleared IFR.
It helps me
Tango, Papa,
in
Alpha, as filed.
immersing
Maintain
myself
8,000,
more realistically.
4701.
So hopefully this is
Kilo, Tango, Papa, Alpha,
help
as
you
filed.
in
Maintain
with building your own
8,000,
checklist. You may have
4701,
preferences to do something a little
November,
different,
02 X-ray, Papa.
or you can actually download actual checklist. I find those to be a little bit tedious, a lot more than I need or want.
Echo,
And,
Delta, Charlie, Bravo, 9er 273, hold short of runway 9er.
We are now crossing over runway taxiway A. We look both ways, make sure there's nothing there, and then cross right on over it, and we're now onto taxiway C. You can see we're on runway C because the box to the left tells us C in the black, and the red 18 and 36-18, that's runway 36 and 180, are not active right now. But I wanted to stop, check, look, and we're clear to go across. So I want something to take me somewhere between just not doing anything but starting a plane and flying off into the sky using actual checklists. In fact, I believe typically they have not just one checklist. They may go through 5 or 6 checklists before you even taxi. So what I'm putting together is a very simplified one. A little tip on using the heading indicator: if you just want to practice touch and goes and want to do really nice turns into each one of the legs, the crosswind, the downwind, the base leg, and final approach, set your heading indicator to the runway that you're taking off out of, and in my case it's runway 9 or 90 degrees. Makes it easy because then you just subtract 90 for each one. You got 360, 270, 180. But if you don't have a runway that is so convenient, you just set that heading indicator to that, and then you can use the little orange marks around the compass to, every time you turn into the crosswind, to the downwind, each and every time you just turn into your heading indicator lines up with that orange marker, and then run your few miles downwind, and then you make your base leg turn, and you're gonna turn your heading indicator until it matches up with the next orange marker until you come into your final approach. Nice little tip to make nice, perfect rectangular legs. Here we are. We're coming up to the next taxiway, and once again we can look over to the taxiway designation box. We see once again that in the black it says C. We're on C, but in the yellow it says B. So, and we want to get on B, so we're going to go ahead and make a left-hand turn here to go on to B. And start heading down towards runway 9. So, while we have some time going down this runway, let's talk about airnav.com. And you can go to airnav.com and type in your any designated airport that you wish, and you get everything, all the information that you want to know about that airport. And if you scroll down a little bit on that web page, you see over to the right hand side there's airport diagram. Most of them have a downloadable PDF like I have for this one, and you can click on that and download that and use that with your e-bag to be viewed inside of X-Plane 11. It's fantastic. Not everyone has the downloadable PDF, but for the airport diagram it's nice because you can see the taxiway designations on these nice diagrams. If you don't, though, don't get too discouraged. If you don't have a PDF at your particular airport, you can scroll down, and then there's the landing approach procedures, and there's a whole slew of different downloadable PDFs for those. This is the approach vectors you would use for runway 9, and they have one you can download for each different runway. Another thing is you can go into the settings in the general tab and click on the yellow arrows, and if you don't, and you know the airport you're not familiar with and you're a little confused, you can turn on the yellow arrows and it will tell you exactly where to taxi. This works on departure. It also works on arrival when you land. Now back to our chart, we can look at the how to do an approach to runway 9 and all the detailed information. I'm not going into that because that's not what this video is about, but these charts are what you're going to need for that kind of thing anyway. And you can notice on there's an inset on the bottom right, and that is your airport diagram, but it's a little bit small. You can zoom in on it, but it doesn't always have the taxiway letter designations. If you don't want the yellow line, you go ahead and turn it back off. I did it by magic, but I actually paused, went back in to the general settings, and then checked the box. So that's how you turn those back on and off. And once you get familiar, of course you probably want those off. Very handy though for learning your airport and getting around your taxiways. So hopefully this helped you with kind of getting you a more realistic takeoff and departure procedure, using the radios, using the weather. I'm going to turn on the HCT because I know once I get up to the stop short line here, the control tower will contact me.
November 172 Sierra Papa. Contact tower on 118.9er.
So here we go. We go ahead and contact tower.
Contact tower on 118.9er. November 172 Sierra Papa.
Here's kind of a replay of giving me an external view. Space Coast Regional is in Titusville, Florida. It's right outside of Kennedy Space Center. It's my hometown, so this is a nice airport for me.
Tower, November 172 Sierra Papa.
Using the dollar box wizard,
November 172 Sierra Papa. Fly heading 100. Runway 9er. Clear for
It pretty
takeoff.
much helps you in what to do next.
Heading 100. Runway 9er cleared for takeoff. November 172 Sierra
Make sure you
Papa.
repeat every instruction. I'm going to go ahead and click the yoke back on. Before I do, you notice on the compass, you can now, if you wanted to set the orange indicator to the designated flight direction of 110, which we just instructed, you can do that.
Tower, November 02 X-ray Papa.
So I don't really have the best takeoff in this particular one. Doing the recording and thinking about what I'm saying and all that stuff. And I don't have rudder pedals. I just have one of those sticks where you can do the yaw by twisting your wrist, and I'm not quite holding a nice steady line here. But nevertheless, this is not so much about flying, but about using your departure procedure. Hopefully you enjoyed that, and you now know how to use the checklist.
November 02 X-ray Papa. Fly heading 10.
So that's the plane that's sitting right behind us.
Clear for takeoff.
Heading
And they just got cleared to take
100.
off.
Runway 9er cleared for takeoff. November 02 X-ray Papa.
November 172 Sierra Papa. Contact center on 132.25.
Contact center on 132.25. November 172 Sierra Papa. Center, November 172 Sierra Papa.
November 172 Sierra Papa. Kilo Tango India X-ray. Altimeter 2992. November 172 Sierra Papa. Fly heading 190. Vectors for the visual. Runway 9er. Climb and maintain 2000.
Heading 190. Vectors for the visual. Runway 9er up to 2000. November 172 Sierra Papa. Center, November 0.
So to use the checklist, I told you I'd explain how to use the built-in X-Plane 11 checklist function. Is basically you make your own notepad of items you want to do, and you drop that into the roots of your X-Plane
November
11 folder.
X-ray Papa.
And once you got that, as long as you name it in the checklist correctly, which I'll have up on the screen here, you're good to go, and it should pop up. If it's not showing up, you either named it wrong or you don't have it in the right folder. But I believe it goes in the root folder of X-Plane 11, and then you can use that checklist. But I really do like eBag. It's kind of nice to have that as well, so you can look at your charts and diagrams. And hopefully you enjoyed this simplified version, and how we went through and looked at all the different items that before we took off for flight, and give us a little bit more immersion in our flight simulator experience. Like I said, I'm not an actual pilot. These aren't real checklists, but you can certainly use the things I talked about today to import actual checklists. So hopefully you enjoyed all that, and
November 172
happy flying.
Sierra Papa. Descend and maintain 2000.
down to 2000, November, 172, Sierra, Papa.
Okay, goodbye for now.